Welcome to episode 90 of the Breaking Balls podcast. If you had Joey Hand and Alex Bowman dueling it out at the end of the Chicago street course today, congratulations. You are officially the third member of the Breaking Balls podcast. Another week, another rain delay, Bob. How about it?
Yeah, this one was only about 2 hours long, though, Ad. So the streets of Chicago, Alex Bowman locks himself into the playoffs. SVG got a little too saucy into turn 6 thanks to Chase Briscoe. And Josh Berry is this year's Noah Gragson.
Flags in the air. Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, boys.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 90 of the Breaking Balls podcast. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We cover NASCAR on a daily basis here, all the news as it drops, and we're here to break down the Chicago street race, Bob. We had to wait a little bit with the rain delay, but ultimately, patience was worth it for the 48 team, right?
If you're an Alex Bowman fan, absolutely. All it took was the top 3 or 4 cars to wreck out a rain-shortened race. I believe it's the second shortest race in NASCAR modern history. It took a lot of acts of God here, but Alex Bowman is finally the 4th Hendrick driver to lock himself into the playoffs here. Like you said in that intro ad, if you told me that this was going to be an Alex Bowman versus Joey Hand race, I would have had a lot of questions here, because I would have said Joey Hand is finally made. What is this, the new Project 91? We've already thrown away Trackhouse, and now RFK's Stage 60 is the hot new car on the track, I guess. But Alex Bowman, this is his 8th career win. I think what is it, 80 wins or 80 races since his last win in Vegas in 2022. So it's a long time coming, and I hate to tell you that because I don't want to trigger you here, but Alex Bowman won in California at Fontana, won at Chicagoland. Those tracks are dead. Is this a death nail for the Chicago street course?
Do you just want to hurt my feelings? This is not a way to start this podcast, I'll tell you that.
I'm sorry.
I mean, look, just because Amazon decided to kill my dreams doesn't mean that my co-host needs to, too. I mean, come on, dude. What the hell? But yeah, like we said, if you would have told me that a one-off project car, whether it be Project 91 or Project 60, and a Hendrick driver were racing at the end of this, it probably would have been Larson and SVG in my mind, but turn 6 took care of them pretty early. I mean, at the end of the day, we do have to tip the cap to Alex Bowman, because the decision to keep the rain tires on, especially at the end there, and just go for it, took a lot of balls. And you got to give him credit, because at the end of the day, it worked out for him, and that's, he's in the playoffs.
Well, and it took a race against the clock even. This was, you called it IMSA car, I believe, Ad, when we were kind of doing the rundown here. It definitely had a different style feel. Obviously, the street course is already foreign to a lot of NASCAR fans. Now we're racing against the clock here. They're taking away my NASCAR here.
I was going to say, on the weekend where we discussed an electric car, and then we're running a street course, and then we've got a timer all of a sudden. If you're a NASCAR purist, at this point, you are punching the air. Because this weekend was definitely not a traditional NASCAR weekend, but it was a ton of fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I guess. I think if you count the whole weekend here, that's the thing. You gotta count Saturday here with the Xfinity race with SVG and Larson. That felt like the main event, really. Because I guess with Sunday's race, you got stage 1, which was pretty good racing. You still had that rain there, but it was still dramatic and really entertaining. And then this rain delay comes in and really just kind of wipes the momentum for me. We'll get into the whole rain delay and how they handled it here, but I guess for me, I just kind of feel like after the Charlotte Coke 600, where I feel like there's a lot of just what ifs and mystery in the air, and I feel like as a race fan, I got a lot of decent racing. But especially when I saw what I saw yesterday at the Xfinity race with SVG and Larson, if we could just have one weekend of good weather in Chicago, I feel like this could be the best track in NASCAR.
I would be hard pressed to disagree with you at this point, because it's produced great racing. It's easily the best road course we go to, and there's something about it. It just creates chaos. You know that there's not that many passing zones because it's narrow. I'm just like you, Bob. I'm just disappointed that we didn't get to see a clear weathered race today, because I just think one of these days, if we come back to Chicago and we get clear weather, I think the Cup Series can absolutely put on a show. I mean, we saw it, and the track was even just a little bit damp today, and there was still a lot of action going on. And yeah, like you said, it's kind of the season of what ifs, and this is just another one in a long line of what ifs. Is, if this course is dry, what does this race look like? Because it was highly entertaining, even with the wet weather and all of the calamity that ensued.
And there was a lot of calamity. I think what the interesting thing about the Chicago street course is the traditional NASCAR courses we see, there's always room for runoffs and there's always a little bit of room for forgiveness. There's nowhere to hide. And I think the perfect example is with Alex Bowman racing with 2 laps to go. You've got Tyler Reddick, who's about 2.5 seconds back, 3 seconds back, and he is cutting chunks every sector into Alex Bowman's lead. And then you see Tyler Reddick make a little mistake there on the back end of the track there with he's probably within a second there of Alex Bowman on the last lap. But it just shows that you can just push even a little bit too hard there, and it's unforgiving here. And I think that's the fascinating thing, is just watching these guys cut it to the race. And that really, I hate going back to it, but that really just shows me how impressive that SVG and Larson race was on Saturday, because it's guys just literally on the edge of control there. I really do love this Chicago street course ad. Watching Tyler Reddick hunt down Alex Bowman, that was just fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, he hunted down Bubba Wallace exiting pit road, so you're not wrong there. So, that was a slip of the tongue, however. But, yeah, Bob, just to see, really a heartbreaker for Reddick, you could tell what he was trying to do. He was just trying to run a little bit more inside of where the dry line was on that corner. Unfortunately, there's just that little bit of a pesky wall there that, crazy. But, ultimately, it just goes to show you drive the thing as hard as you can. He was, the inches that you need to win races are everywhere on a racetrack. And that's just an instance of Tyler Reddick absolutely going for it in the best way possible and just barely missing out. And I'll say this, it produced a very sad Tyler Reddick interview. That's 2 in a row, and I don't really know what to do with that. I mean, it's bumming me out at this point.
I was definitely worried about him. He definitely seemed like the vibes were even low going into this race on the pre-race interview. And then, yeah, this is 2 weeks in a row where you could really theoretically say Tyler Reddick was in a position to win this race on the last lap. And how many times can you say that back-to-back weeks and the guy has go 0 for 2? Definitely frustrating for Tyler Reddick, who has 1 race win this year. And it seems like that's the common theme with Tyler Reddick the last few seasons, is he's always going to be in position to win. But it seems like the percentage of times he wins is a lot less compared to a guy like Denny Hamlin or Kyle Larson, where they're always in positions and they end up capitalizing and closing. Tyler Reddick just seems like he's not at the position in his career where he's just closing these races out.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's one thing to be in all of these races and to constantly be competitive, and there's no doubt that Tyler Reddick is always in the mix towards the end of races. It's just developing that finishing skill, and I think it'll come eventually. But yeah, at this point, you definitely, you start to notice trends, and this is definitely one that's developing.
I mean, you said it would come, but for Tyler Reddick, he was literally racing 2 things, Ad. He was racing Alex Bowman for the lead, and he was racing the literal clock. He was literally racing until, I believe we have it down, 8:20 p.m. Central Time, local time. NASCAR said that's a hard out, okay? We are done at 8:20. First of all, we don't have lights in the middle of downtown. Never mind. I don't even want to get into this, but you could just tell the urgency there for the drivers, because it certainly wasn't on the NASCAR side of things, the urgency there. We might as well get into this before we get into the actual action before the rain delay, because like I said, this kind of was a buzzkill race for me where I had a lot of expectations and I got a decent stage 1, and then this rain delay happens, and then there's just a lot of calamity, I guess. You've got all these, like I said, racing the clock and all that, but my biggest thing is, if you know you've got a hard out at 8:20 and we're done, okay, let's have a little more urgency with these stage breaks. We're not going to run 3 or 4 laps under caution. We're not going to run, I think they said it was 9 minutes, the last caution before that very last overtime restart, or in theory overtime restart there. It just felt like NASCAR wasn't in as much of an urgency like the drivers were. It didn't match it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think this comes from NASCAR's, kind of want to keep people safe almost, because they were just so worried about what was going to happen with the slicks and the wet, and they were trying to be overly cautious for guys who had already made the decision to take the risk. And that doesn't make any sense because, like you said, it just, there was a mismatch of energy between the drivers and the sanctioning body today, and it was really clear if you were watching, because everybody on the track had that, okay, let's get going, let's race, I want to decide this on the track, and NASCAR just seemed to be kind of dragging their feet a little bit, like you said, the yellow flag was the most notable, thing, because it just, to go around that long of a track that many times, yeah, I just wish, I agree 100%. I wish there was more urgency to this race, because the on-track product, it may not have been, the most traditionally, like, what you look for in a race, but I'll say this, I was entertained the entire day.
That's the issue, though. I was entertained. I wanted more. I wanted more on-track action. And instead, we got, I think, like I said, it was the second shortest Cup race in modern history, going back to 1970, 72 or something like that. I just felt like, as a race fan, with all the hype, all the pomp and circumstance, they're building this up to be a major crown jewel race now. And it definitely has the feel of it with the drivers. We've got to have some sort of better planning than just, oh, well, we started at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock, and well, we've got a 2-hour delay, and now we've got to hard out at 8:20. We've got to cut these short. It just felt like it was all thrown together.
No, I agree. It was definitely a NASCAR patch job, to where they're very clearly just making up the rules as they go. And, to where nobody really knows, nobody had the contingency plan. You've probably heard a sports coach tell you, if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. And, the quote rings very much true after watching what NASCAR did in Chicago today.
Well, it felt like this was a tale of two races, and sort of like the New Hampshire race, but reversed on its head, where the rain delay was what really put a just damper on this race. The first stage ad was pretty darn good. I will say, let's just kind of rewind this whole race here. You had Road Course Ringer stealing the stages, with SVG winning stage 1 and Joey Hand stage 2. First of all, if somebody has a parlay out there, they probably just won about $500 million out there. They just absolutely took out DraftKings' whole capital.
I was going to say, I would love to see your ticket if you have that. Please tweet it at us, however you can get it to us. I would love to see that ticket, because somebody, there's a degenerate who has it somewhere.
Somebody out there felt very good about their Joey Hand stage winner bet. They just placed it for stage 1. But like I said, this was a tale of two races. SVG was the winner in stage 1 and really looked like he was the guy to beat all day. Christopher Bell probably had an answer for him. He was hunting him down toward the end of stage 1, but let's not joke here. Let's be bygones aside. SVG, the defending winner of the Chicago street race, wins the Xfinity race on Saturday. He was the guy to beat. And then this torpedo comes out of nowhere via Stewart Haas Racing, named Chase Briscoe. Just gets him barely on the backside, but just enough to where he got sent into the turn 6 wall. Taking number SVG into the turn 6 wall, it was a lot of guys' Achilles heel today, but that was really the start of things today.
Yeah, and the worst part is that, you looked like he may have had a chance to keep going, even though you hit the wall, because, like you said, this track, with there being no track limits or anything, it's very unforgiving, but you saw guys kind of bounce off the tire barriers and just keep going. And then suddenly you see him get out of the car, you finally get a peek at that right front, and it was just toasted. I mean, yeah, definitely sad. I mean, a lot of people, interacting with our TikTok video saying, oh, of course Briscoe took him out. At the end of the day, it's a racing incident. Nobody knows the amount of grip that they have. I understand the Chase Briscoe blaming that's going on, but let's not act like the track wasn't, soaking wet and everybody was trying to figure things out there, right?
I'm with you. I think I will say Chase Briscoe does have a history of kind of sometimes being too big for the moment there in this next gen car. You've gone back to the Tyler Reddick Bristol Dirt, Kyle Larson, the Coke 600. Even pre-next gen, you had him sending it on Denny Hamlin at the Indy Road Course, and a move that a lot of fans still love to this day. But it's a moment where Chase Briscoe definitely was the guy that was just a little too hot on the brakes there. It was him there. But really, I was more impressed that before that, it was a lot of spray up in the air. I mean, it was just literally a monsoon of cars shooting up rainwater. And outside of really that incident there with Chase Briscoe, those guys kept it fairly clean and professional for most of stage 1 up until that incident.
Yeah, it was super impressive. I think we had 2 cautions in stage 1. And, you would have expected to be a little bit of a demolition derby considering the track conditions. And, the guys running slicks on a wet track. But no, I think, the entire field did a really good job of not only gauging pace, but gauging the grip that they were able to make with that, with the pace and on the slicks. It made for some really intriguing racing. I mean, who'd have thought parity in the tires and, guys having to do different strategies makes for good racing. Oh my goodness, who would have thought? But no, I mean, just put it, just throw it on the list of examples that shows NASCAR. When there's a little bit of parity with these cars, you get some pretty good racing, because stage 1 rocked.
It was very, very, very compelling racing. And like you said, the tire strategy, we'll get into that in a little bit there, but that really did throw a nice little wrinkle into the race where it was something else that you could really add into the dynamics of these guys had the really race strategy in their hands. It was up to them to figure out what they wanted to do. But we talked about SVG getting a little too saucy into turn 6 there, and his race ending early in stage 2. Late in stage 2, one of the guys that was also his counterpart, the pole sitter Kyle Larson, it really looked like he was going to be one of the guys to beat once SVG went out. And then Kyle Larson just absolutely cooks it into that barrier there. And his day ends in stage 2 as well. I mean, man, it was one of those days where it was really a war of attrition. It wasn't the best car winning day. It was just who could survive with the speed today.
100%. You took the words out of my mouth. A war of attrition, 100%. I will say this. That Kyle Larson wreck could have been awful. It was very scary to see where he hit that part of the wall that, he maybe hit the one part that had a few tires. So luckily, was able to drive away and was fine, gets checked out. But yeah, I don't know. It was very interesting. You heard them kind of talking on the broadcast as to, Christopher Bell maybe saying that there was something slick, kind of going into turn 6 that may have caused that. Obviously, not a ton of follow-up. We didn't really get any follow-up of that to understand whether or not there was or wasn't, but just a really weird image because you don't see a guy like Kyle Larson miss a corner like that often. And, just glad he's okay.
I go back to the Indy Road Course a couple of years ago where he absolutely just, whether it was mechanical failure or self-inflicted, we'll never actually get the answer from Hendrick on that one, but I think about him getting absolutely rocked at the Indy Road Course a couple years ago. That was a similar hit today in Chicago where he just went nose first this time instead, though. But the two guys that really you thought might have been the cars to beat today, they fall out. You had Christopher Bell, who got spun late, but really he got mired by track position with this late pit strategy. 2 years in a row, Christopher Bell really had a stage 3 winning car that track position just gets him stuck there. Really, really frustrating for him. But nobody's more frustrated probably than this year's Noah Gragson Darling of the Year. We're naming the award after Noah Gragson after his antics last year going into the barrier every 5 or 6 laps. He even made a joke about it on the broadcast. This year's recipient of that award goes to Hendersonville, Tennessee's and new Wood Brothers driver Josh Berry, who it feels like we're still digging his car out of the turn.
Yeah, if there was a wall that could have been hit on this racetrack, Josh Berry hit it today. And that's basically all the analysis you need to know about what happened to Josh Berry in Chicago. The poor guy simply could not keep it between the lines. And, every now and again you're going to have a bad day at the racetrack. Josh Berry, this was your bad day at the racetrack, sir. Go ahead and take your lumps and let's just move on to Pocono.
Listen, the ink is already dried on that Wood Brothers contract, Josh. You're fine. Just chuck the tape into the garbage. We'll forget about this one. We're moving on to Pocono. Because honestly, SHR as a team just had a banner day too.
I'll say this. Is there some sort of magnetic attraction between a Wendy's sponsorship and Turn 6? These are my questions. Because Noah Gragson last year, SVG this year, that just popped into my head because I was thinking of all the carnage. Obviously, sorry to take us away from the Josh Berry talk, but at this point, there's something about the Biggie Bag that loves hitting Turn 6.
Well, with all the McDonald's sponsorship around the track, one's to say that maybe there was just some tampering going on there. I don't know, but the fast food wars wage their way into NASCAR.
I'm just saying, have we ever seen Grimace and the guys who set the track up at the same time? Like, these are my questions. Was Grimace part of the track crew and just really wreaking havoc for NASCAR today? These are my questions. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but here I am.
I'll throw it one deeper. Alex Bowman's car is purple. Grimace purple. Everyone, there's your connection there. Grimace was behind Alex Bowman in the Ally car today. But let's get this thing back on track before people actually unsubscribe and we lose our entire audience here. We did have the start of the race today where, first of all, we got a little delayed, little rain. What's new with NASCAR? A little small delay before the main course later in the race for 2 hours, but we did get this whole fascinating thing of NASCAR is going to let these teams run one lap, figure out what they want to run on their tires. If they want to run those rain tires or slick tires, then they can come down, change it if they want. And I think as a viewer, if you have no skin in the game, it was fascinating to watch this strategy unfold live as a viewer, right?
100%. I think we talked about it after the New Hampshire race. Why don't you give the guys the chance to decide what they want to do? And luckily, NASCAR must be listening to our podcast because that's exactly what they did today, and it was the right decision. I think you've got people who make a lot of money to make the types of decisions as far as mechanical and setup and all of that type of thing. I'm just excited. I was really excited to see that NASCAR kind of said, "All right, look, you guys are going to make the decision." And we'll see what happens. And, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Ultimately, we were rewarded with a pretty clean stage one. Guys figured it out pretty quickly. But we do have to give NASCAR a ton of credit just for giving the teams the options. I thought that was the right decision. I thought it made for a really compelling race. And ultimately, you want race car drivers to decide the winner of races. And their decision to allow them to pick the tires during stage one, I think really afforded them that opportunity.
I do agree. And it was a race today where we towed the line on it, where would we race or would we not? And you literally saw them try it one time, and you had that Chase Briscoe SVG incident where they finally red flagged the race after that. But they went out there and they restarted that race right before that. And you saw the leaders, even Christopher Bell, kick the back end out, and it caused a mass accordion effect when they were coming on the front stretch there. That spray was kicking up, and you couldn't see cars. As soon as that first level went through, that first wave went through cars, there was absolutely nothing but just a cloud of just rain kicked up. And I think credit to NASCAR for giving these guys, hey, you do what you want, but don't blame us if something goes wrong here. This is 100% up to you guys. Like you said, with New Hampshire, with the oval, I get them at least trying to toe the water a little bit with the ovals, but with these road courses, street courses, listen, that's what they're there for. I loved it.
No, I agree. You developed the rain tire for a reason. Christopher Bell was hilarious during his rain delay interview. Do we race in the rain or do we not? And at the end of the day, we raced in the rain today, kind of.
Leave it to the dirt track guys that just hey, we're racing no matter what. I don't care, hell or high water.
Exactly. They don't give a shit what it looks like. They just want to get on the track and figure it out, find the line, and go from there. But Bob, you mentioned the spray, and we kind of forgot to mention it a little bit earlier, but the spray caused issues for our eventual race winner, Alex Bowman. He was kind of trying to turn his windshield wiper on, he said, and ultimately ends up hitting Bubba Wallace and really putting him in a bad spot, and obviously kind of junking his day a little bit. Bubba not too happy after the race. I mean, what say you about the incident between Bowman and Bubba?
Well, you've got two ends of the spectrum here where, yes, it definitely threw Bubba's day in a wrench there. Top 10 qualifying speed today for the 2311 team there. Bubba Wallace, who's notably not that great on road courses, really has improved the last few years. And again, this was another week where top 10 qualifying, matching his teammate Tyler Reddick there pretty well. And then, gets caught up with Alex Bowman there. Bowman, even in his victory lane interview, showed that he was apologetic, didn't mean any malice there. But you got Bubba Wallace remembering that. And he remembered all the way till the end of the race there goes by. And when Alex Bowman's getting ready to take it to victory lane, got the window net down, Bubba Wallace comes up. And you even saw on the in-car camera him slamming into him, taking him into the wall for a brief second there, showing his frustration. I'm sure that he'll be hearing from NASCAR. I don't think it'll be a points penalty necessarily. I'm sure there will be a hefty fine for Mr. Wallace, but they don't like it when you do anything when the window net is down there,
Yeah, I would say that's the biggest issue is just when it happened. I think obviously, it would have been a little bit smarter to just kind of, just file it away in the file cabinet a little bit and just maybe in one of the races, kind of at the end of the season here, maybe get that. But ultimately, I mean, Bubba's going to end up having to, all of these races count massively for Bubba now. So I guess, doesn't really necessarily have time to worry about payback at this point because he's going to need to put some good races together, maybe even get a win to get in the playoffs. I get the frustration. I'm a bit of a snap show myself. I know that'll shock everyone, but I totally understand the emotions and why that happens. Like you said, he'll hear from NASCAR. He'll take his lumps for sure. But at the end of the day, in the world of NASCAR where guys are really hesitant to kind of stick up for themselves on the track, you do got to kind of give Bubba some credit to basically, at least saying, hey, if you're going to do stuff like that, you are going to, get something back from me. The timing of it, don't necessarily agree with it, but ultimately, I do understand the sentiment behind it.
It's not quite him getting into it with Kyle Larson at Kansas a few years ago and warning a suspension. If Carson Hocevar right-rearing Harrison Burton last weekend under caution doesn't get a suspension, then Bubba Wallace is not getting suspended for slamming into Alex Bowman there at post-race. I think there'll be a fine, and then we all move on from that hunky-dory, but you did mention frustrated. I think that's the main thing here for Bubba Wallace is last week Joe Logano wins a race, takes away a playoff spot. That's a guy who was right next to him on the playoff bubble cut line. What happens this week? Alex Bowman, the guy right above him on the playoff bubble cut line, takes another playoff spot. Now we're down to, I think there's 5 spots left, give or take, if my math's right here.
I think so.
That time is ticking there for Bubba Wallace to either get a win or point his way in, and the margin for error is just slimmer and slimmer. When you have a car today that had qualifying top 10 speed, you got to make the most of it there. And 13th place finish today. It wasn't the worst day overall, but when a guy like Alex Bowman, who takes you out early, wins the race, the frustration is going to be warranted there. So we'll see what happens moving forward there. Like I said, Bubba Wallace coming in 13th today. We'll get into some of these results here now. I do have to give a tip of the cap to you because you did call it, and although you say it every week, it does end up working out a lot of times here. Michael McDowell, a 5th place finish here. SVG kind of used him up early in this race, but Michael McDowell in that Chicago White Sox car, he performs better than the actual baseball team does this year, and it's 5th place. Yeah, for those of you paying attention, I actually paid attention to that baseball reference. There you go. Yeah, there you go.
I am shook that Bob making a Chicago White Sox joke on this podcast was nothing I ever had. But no, very cool cross branding. I really appreciated that. Actually, one of my high school friends designed that car, which was actually really cool. Got a chance to talk to him about it a little bit. But yeah, just a really cool cross branding experience. I'll say this: you buy the Michael McDowell lottery ticket enough times, it will hit. That much. If this podcast has taught you nothing else, that should be it. Just a good day. Not a great day, but a good day. Not necessarily the finish he needs. Not going to get him in the playoffs, but a good day for Michael McDowell. But you know what, Bob? Let me go ahead and take that praise and put it right back onto you. Because the 3rd place finisher was Ty Gibbs, and I had a co-host who may or may not have, who picked Ty Gibbs in this one. So as much as I pick Michael McDowell all the time, you were dead on with your Ty Gibbs analysis, Bob.
Well, I listen, I got lucky. I was on the Toyotas this weekend. I thought Ty Gibbs would look like a good pick, and obviously 3rd place. Tyler Reddick, I was also very heavy on because of last year's success, 2nd place, but just that moment got too big for him, like we said on that last lap. But really, the Toyotas and their road course package really has just taken a massive step. I know 2311 especially, obviously Tyler Reddick has really elevated their road course program, but and this sounds crazy here, but for those that don't really pay too much of attention, his name is Keegan Leahy. He is actually an iRacer. 2311 brought him in as a professional sim race development driver for those guys about 2 or 3 years ago, and you've seen their program really elevate ever since that. It really is just a lot of funds going into this program with 2311, and I think you're seeing that elevate the entire Toyota team overall. But another guy we've got to get some credit here is Todd Gilliland in 7th there, off raw speed today. Front row really brought 2 cars to the track today that were really, really strong, and you got to give some credit to them because really 4 of the top 10 cars today were Ford. Even Ryan Blaney sneaking into the top 10. I mean, really, listen, Ford really showing some road course speed.
Yeah, Ford, and especially front row. I mean, it just seems like both cars are pretty competitive every road course that we go to. They've got something going on there. I don't necessarily know what it is, but it's good to see them have that speed. like you said, Blaney sneaking into the top 10. Another guy, two guys, to be honest with you, who get finishes, who haven't in a really long time. One more notable than the other. It's William Byron and Kyle Busch, both in the top 10, finishing 8th for William Byron and 9th for Kyle Busch. Finally got some finishes.
Ed, just going to quiz you here real quick. When would you say Kyle Busch's last top 10 was, if you had to say?
At some point earlier in the year, I would say probably we're talking 2 months at least.
Yeah, it would be Kansas
be
back
months,
in
right?
March, early May for Kansas for Kyle Busch. That's his last top 10 coming up until this week. So, yeah, really getting the ship a little bit righted there for Kyle Busch and that 8 team. And listen, the bar was low, but the fact that he even snuck his way back up there, it felt like, the Ford team really elevated themselves today. But RFK, Justin Haley was up there for a little bit again today. It seems like we say it every week. He was 16th today. Noah Gragson was the one Stewart-Haas guy that really, it felt like, was not bidding it all week, or just at least slow on speed. Noah Gragson, I think, was 14th there, but was running top 10 late. Even said on an interview, listen, I'm just trying to creep around this place. I see the ghosts of turn 6 from last year. I'm just trying to get home in one piece. I do love that.
No, you have to. I mean, you got to respect the honesty at that point, for sure. I mean, it's one of those things where I don't understand as a human being how, if you're Noah Gragson, how you could show up at this track and think anything but, GTA San Andreas, shit, here we go again. Like, it just felt like it was going to be, shades of last year. So good to see him kind of right the ship and get a decent finish today.
And on the other hand, Ad, if you would have told me the bottom 3 are AJ Allmendinger, Kyle Larson, and Shane Van Gisbergen, Christopher Bell is right above them, by the way, I would have just said, what has gone horribly on? There must have been a wreck on lap 1. But no, those guys there wasn't a lot of just absolute carnage today for a race that you would think would be full of it. But the one guy that really, he was in the top 5 late was Martin Truex Jr., got spun late and then ends up 33rd today. A guy that, listen, with Alex Bowman winning another playoff spot gone, I'm not saying he's in danger here, but if you add 1 or 2 more of these events where a playoff spot gets taken and Truex finishes in the late 20s or 30s, I mean, man, we are just going to be looking at a sweaty camp in the 19 team for another season, it feels like.
Yeah, it's one of those things to where it doesn't feel like a problem if this is a one-off, but 100%, if Uncle Mo comes to visit and these bad finishes kind of start to stack up towards the end of the year here, I mean, obviously pretty safe right now, has banked himself a ton of points, but who's to tell what's going to happen in these next few weeks? And if we keep getting new winners, the pressure is going to stack up quickly for the 19 team, is what I will say. But not in full panic mode right now. I let's pump the brakes on that. But definitely, let's try and stop the bleeding this week, and see if we can turn over a new leaf going into Pocono if you're the 19.
That's the biggest thing, is you can't let it spitball into more. You can't let it have a downhill effect and all these DNFs and low finishes start to stack up, because that's the biggest thing that's kept Martin Truex in the top 10 of the NASCAR point standings, and I believe even top 5 up to this point, was he's getting finishing results. He may not be winning and may not be, getting these stage points, stage wins, but he's at least finishing top 10, top 15 on a consistent basis and kind of balancing out that. But as these playoff positions get taken up by guys like Alex Bowman, like Joe Logano, that were on the bottom of that cut line, ooh boy, it's going to get lonely as those guys like him and Ross Chastain, Ty Gibbs, they're going to be looking sweaty. We did put a video on YouTube, I believe, Thursday night, kind of analyzing the NASCAR playoff bubble. Really, everything that we said on Thursday night has echoed, if not even more amplified now with another playoff winner. So go ahead and check that out, Ad. But anything else that we missed from these results here before we kind of put a bow on Chicago's weekend here?
No, but I do have to give NBC a little bit of credit before we say goodbye, because today I did not see a commercial until lap 8, and for the love of God, they gave me a side-by-side that early in the race. So every now and again, when the broadcast does something right, you got to tip your cap. That's all I'll say about that. We're not going to do much more, but Bob, I was so excited when it was the first commercial and I got a side-by-side. I didn't really even know what to do with myself.
Yeah, the broadcast coverage compared to Fox with Sonoma is just day and night difference there. obviously, especially with a road course and a street course layout like this, it's hard to keep up with everything because there is so much going on. And there's moments where you'll notice a spin in the background that doesn't really get talked about for 30 seconds and all that. But listen, we'll give NBC some grace because they've earned it right now. And like I said, with a street course, it's a little bit tougher. But I love that they do that stadium-style broadcast where there's multiple guys in each corner. I need more Mike Bagley on my TV every week. NBC, make it happen.
Yeah, I don't know what I have to do to get the Mike Bagley cast to be done through NBC, but I would subscribe. I'd do pay-per-view, whatever it is. Could listen to the guy talk about what's going on the racetrack all day. Does a really good job. I think the setup really just bodes itself to a really good broadcast, and they knocked it out of the park again this year.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned subscribe, Adam, because if you're this deep into the podcast and somehow you haven't subscribed or you're new here, go ahead, subscribe to Breaking Balls. We're always putting out content here. I promise it's more than just SVG stuff. We cover NASCAR and all that stuff on a daily basis. So go ahead, check us out on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all your different social media outlets. We're overrun and flooded with it all, Ad. But go ahead, send us home here, Ad. This is episode 90 of the Breaking Balls podcast. We have made it, Chicago. A little rain, a little shorter than we thought, but it's okay. Take me home, Ad. We're going to be fine.
Well, and I hit turn 6. I'm sorry.
Oh, Adam O'Shea is out of the Chicago street course. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching.